I'm a 24-year-old guy, and at the time, I was in my final year of college, about a 2-day drive from my hometown. Spring break had just started, and I decided to spend it back home. I've always liked long drives. Being alone on the road gives me time to think. I left early Tuesday morning before sunrise. By the time the sky started to lighten up, I was already deep into the interstate. I didn't bother using GPS or any map app. I just followed the state highway signs and had a rough idea where I should stop. My plan was to drive about 10 hours before finding a place to stay. Around 7:30 that evening, the sky had turned dark blue over the horizon, and I started feeling worn out. I pulled into a big rest area, filled up my tank, and checked my phone for nearby motels. The best, or maybe the only affordable option, was an old motel listed about 20 miles off the main highway, down a small rural road that supposedly led to a farming town. I turned off the interstate and soon found myself on an old state road. It felt quiet and forgotten. There were no streetlights except at the main intersections. My car was the only moving light around. Dark fields stretched out on both sides, and every now and then, I'd catch the outline of an old, broken-down barn or farmhouse. After about 10 minutes, the directions led me onto a narrow, unpaved road. At the end of that tree-lined road, I finally saw it. The motel. It was a long, one-story building made of faded wood and old bricks. The neon sign was mostly dead. Only the word MOTEL flickered weakly. I parked right in front of my room, which happened to be the very last one. The parking lot was wide and completely empty, except for one old pickup truck parked near the office. I grabbed my bag and walked toward the office. The lobby was small and gloomy. The lights were dim and yellow. The air smelled like old dust mixed with strong cleaner. The front desk was empty. I stood there for a bit, listening to how silent it was. No music, no TV, not even the sound of a fan. It felt strange. After maybe 2 minutes, a door behind the desk opened slowly, and a tired-looking man came out. He looked to be in his 50s, wearing a worn-out collared shirt. "Evening," he said, sounding surprised to see me. I told him my name, and he checked me in slowly. Then he handed me a key. "Room 105, he said, "all the way down at the end. Have a good night." I thanked him, went back to my car, and headed to room 105. The room was plain. One queen bed, a small old TV, and a little couch. I locked the door, tossed my bag onto the floor, and sat down. I was exhausted. I didn't unpack anything, just scrolled through my phone for a while. Eventually, I turned off the lights, left the bathroom light cracked open a bit, and lay down. I must have fallen asleep right away. I woke up suddenly to a loud bang on my door. It wasn't a light tap, it sounded like someone hitting it with their fist. My heart was pounding. I looked at the clock. 10:55 p.m. Who the hell would knock like that? I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just darkness. I opened the door a little, peeking out to the left and right. The hallway was empty and dark. I locked the door again, trying to shake it off. Maybe someone hit the wrong door. Still, it had sounded too deliberate. I tried to convince myself it was just some weird noise from outside. I got back into bed and decided to take a quick shower to calm down. After that, I set my alarm for 7, turned off the lights again, and tried to sleep. A few minutes later, it happened again. This time it wasn't one bang. It was a rapid series of loud, heavy hits like someone kicking the door again and again. I jumped up immediately. The clock said 2:15 in the morning. This time I ran straight to the door and threw it open. The hallway was completely empty. I stood there for a whole minute, listening for footsteps, a door closing, a car driving away, anything. Nothing. The motel was completely silent. At that point, I felt half crazy. I decided to go talk to the guy at the desk. I threw on my jeans and shoes, locked the room behind me, and walked quickly toward the office. The clerk, who I started calling Ethan in my head, looked startled when I came in. "Something wrong, sir?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to stay calm. "Someone's been banging on my door. Twice tonight. Really hard. The last time was maybe 5 minutes ago. Did you see anyone outside? Is anyone else even staying here?" Ethan looked over his shoulder at the wall where the room keys hung. His expression changed. "Sir," he said quietly, "you're the only guest we have tonight. The only key that's out is for room 105. The pickup outside, that's mine." I froze. The blood in my body felt cold. He gave me a nervous smile. "Maybe it was the wind?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a weak laugh. "Maybe." "Sorry to bother you," I went back to my room, but the unease in my chest was stronger than before. I locked every latch and bolt. I got back in bed, too scared to sleep, and grabbed my phone for light. As soon as the screen lit up, the glow spread across the room. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the room, where the light barely reached, a tall figure was standing completely still. Its head was tilted slightly to one side, facing me. It wasn't my imagination. I had left this room empty when I went to the office. I gasped and stumbled for the door, fumbling with the locks. Right as I got the last one open, I heard fast, heavy footsteps on the carpet behind me. The figure was moving, running straight toward me. I threw the door open and sprinted down the hall, shouting. The sound of footsteps followed, closing in behind me. I burst into the lobby, yelling for help. Ethan jumped up from his chair, shocked. "Call 911, I shouted, diving behind the front desk. Ethan looked past me, and his eyes went wide. The man, the one from my room, ran into the lobby after me. But as soon as he reached the doorway, he stopped. He stood there for a moment, then suddenly turned and ran back out into the night. The police arrived a few minutes later. Ethan told them about me being the only guest, about the banging on the door. They figured the guy must have slipped into my room while I was in the lobby, hiding in the dark corner. He didn't steal anything. He just wanted me to know he was there. By 4 in the morning, I had packed my things, left some cash on the counter, and got the hell out of there. I drove straight until sunrise. Later, I tried to look up that motel online, but I couldn't find it anywhere. It's like the place never existed. To this day, I still can't explain what happened. But I know what I saw, and I know he was real. My name's Liam O'Connell. I'd just gotten home from the packing plant outside Galway around 7:45 p.m. The air was freezing, and sleet had started falling. Since that ugly breakup with Fiona 9 months ago, yeah, that one, I'd been living alone in this old semi-detached stone house on the edge of town. It used to feel warm, full of laughter. Now it's just cold, dead quiet, like a stone coffin. As usual, tonight was raid night with the guys on World of Azeroth. I went straight upstairs, fired up my PC, threw on my SteelSeries headset, and joined the voice chat. It's the one time I feel connected to anyone. Keeps my mind off the empty rooms downstairs. The news had been talking about some Atlantic storm hitting the coast. Strong winds, heavy rain, orange level warnings. But after living here 10 years, I know how it goes. People panic, stock up on milk and bread, and that's about it. At around 10:40 p.m., right as we were lining up at the dungeon gate, I heard it. Wind howling like a train right outside. The old wooden window beside me started rattling hard, and I could feel the pressure in my ears. I said into the mic, "Hold on, lads. This storm's a monster tonight." But before anyone could reply, my monitor flickered, the ring light cut out, and I heard a strange crackle from the router. Then, just as fast, everything came back. I let out a breath. That was close. Almost lost power. But a couple minutes later, without warning, boom. Everything went dark. No flicker, no warning. PC, monitor, router, lights, gone. The whole house drowned in pitch black. I took off my headset, annoyed. Outside, the rain hammered against the windows, and the wind roared like a freight train. I reached into my hoodie pocket for my phone. The glow from the screen felt blinding in the dark. I started down the narrow wooden stairs, each step creaking under my feet. I pulled back the thick curtains in the living room. The storm was insane, could barely see the house across the field. But through the blur, I swore I saw a dim glow in old Mrs. Doherty's window. Maybe a lantern or flashlight. That meant the outage might just be my house. I texted my Discord group. Thank God for my 3 Ireland mobile data. Power's out here, lads. I'm done for tonight. Then I decided to check the main breaker panel. It's not in the basement. It's in a little storage shed out back, accessible through the kitchen door. I turned on my phone flashlight and opened the door. The wind blasted in, carrying the smell of wet dirt and moss. I pushed the shed door open. There, built into the old stone wall, was the breaker box. Every switch was still flipped on weird. If the outage was just in my house, at least one should have tripped. I unlocked the metal cover for the main switch. It was empty. The main lever, the one that cuts all power from the ESB grid, had been pulled down manually. I flipped it back up. Instantly, the kitchen lights flicked on. I stood there for a second, heart pounding. Who the hell? The shed door's always locked from the outside. I locked it tight this time. Then I locked the back double doors too. Back in the living room, I sat down, trying to calm my breathing. The storm still screamed outside, but now I knew that blackout hadn't been random. I turned on a lamp plugged into a different circuit and started scrolling for any local outage reports. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. A new text. It was from a UK number I didn't recognize. The message said, "You should have stayed in the dark. Now he's coming for you in that empty house." I dropped the phone onto the couch. My hands went ice cold. Of course I called the number, but it just rang once and went dead, like a burner phone. Then I heard it. Not upstairs. Not from the shed. The front door. That heavy old door with the brass knob. I always lock it. Always. I froze on the couch, holding my breath. The wind outside had died down, but inside, I could hear the slow, heavy footsteps. Boots. Wet. Stepping onto the wooden floor. Someone was in the house. I jumped up and ran to the kitchen. I grabbed the biggest knife I could find and held my phone in the other hand. I aimed the flashlight down the dark hallway. Then the kitchen light I'd left on started flickering and went out. He'd pulled the main switch again. I was back in complete darkness, and the storm outside sounded even louder now. There was no time to run back out there and flip it again. I heard heavy breathing, getting closer. I grabbed the handle to the shed door that opened into the hallway, slipped inside, and pressed my back against the cold wall, knife tight in my grip. It was the only hiding spot I had, and the door was thick enough to hold, at least for a little while. The footsteps stopped right outside the kitchen door. Silence, except for the storm raging outside. Then a voice, rough, hoarse, almost distorted. "I know you're back. You shouldn't have come." My blood froze. He started tapping at the doorknob, not slamming, testing, like he was checking how strong it was. I took a deep breath, raised my phone, and dialed 999. When the operator answered, "Emergency, ambulance, Garda, or fire," I whispered, "Garda. Someone's in my house on Linane Street. He cut the power. He's right outside the door." The moment she heard Garda, she raised her voice, asking for my full address. As soon as she did, the man outside stopped moving. I heard fast footsteps, moving away, not toward the front, toward the back door. He must have broken the lock when the power went out. I waited, minutes that felt like hours, clutching the knife and phone. Then, finally, red and blue lights flashed through the living room windows. The Garda were here. They kicked in the front door, which, weirdly, wasn't even damaged, and found that the double back doors had been snapped open from the inside. Whoever it was had come in, killed the power from outside, gotten in again, and left through the yard, climbing over the old stone wall. They found nothing missing, except one thing, a piece of paper taped to where the main breaker lever had been. It read, "You'll never be safe alone here. This is only the beginning." The cops confirmed the text came from a prepaid burner bought in Belfast. Whoever did this, they knew about my breakup. They knew I'd be alone. They knew my gaming schedule. This wasn't a random break-in. It was personal. That text was bait, to lure me out to the shed so he could cut the power again and slip inside while I was still downstairs. Even though the Garda are still investigating, I know one thing for sure. Safety is an illusion. I sold the house not long after, because when your home stops feeling like protection and starts feeling like a trap, you never really sleep again. My friend Ethan and I decided to take on a more ambitious camping trip. We were still pretty new to camping, and while we'd done a few public campgrounds before, we wanted something more challenging. We wanted somewhere truly remote, somewhere deep in the woods, with a real sense of isolation. After some research, we found a promising spot, a small ridge hidden deep inside the Black Hills National Forest in South Dakota. It was about a 4-hour drive from where we lived and then a 5-hour hike into the forest. There weren't many reviews, just a few old photos from some rare hikers. It looked like the kind of place where we wouldn't run into anyone else. We went on the first weekend of September 2023, planning for a 3-day trip. When we finally reached the end of a narrow, overgrown dirt road, there was a small, mossy clearing that served as a parking area. Ours was the only car there. The trail we followed looked like it used to be maintained, maybe years ago. Now it was half covered in brush, with parts washed out and broken. It honestly felt like we were walking through a place that had been forgotten. But we kept going. By mid-afternoon, we reached the top. It was a small, grassy clearing that overlooked miles of dense forest. The place was dead quiet, no footprints, no signs of recent visitors. It really felt like no one had been there for a long time. We set up our tent and started unpacking. Ethan took a little longer with his gear, so I wandered toward the edge of the ridge to take in the view. That's when I saw movement. Through the thick branches below, I barely caught sight of what looked like a small group of people, maybe 3 or 4, moving slowly through the trees. It scared the hell out of me. Seeing anyone that deep in the woods was surprising, especially off-trail like that. They were too far and too hidden for me to tell who or what they were. I called for Ethan, but by the time he came over, they were gone, completely swallowed by the forest. We went back to our camp and spent the next few hours just talking and relaxing as the sun went down. We started a small campfire and sat around it, enjoying the quiet. The first few hours of the night were peaceful, just the sound of the fire crackling in the forest around us. Then we heard something else. It started faint, but we both clearly heard it. Voices. Multiple voices, like a group of people talking or whispering back and forth. We couldn't make out the words, or even what language it was. The sound came from somewhere deep in the woods, from the same direction we'd seen the figures earlier. We just looked at each other and listened. The voices didn't move. They stayed in one spot for a while, and then suddenly they stopped. The silence that followed was heavy. We didn't hear them walking away or fading out. They just stopped. Then came footsteps, a single set, getting closer. Seconds later, a man stepped into the glow of our fire. He wore a dark cowboy hat and had straight brown hair down to his shoulders. His face was stretched into this wide, unnatural smile as he approached. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low and raspy. "Do you know where the trail is?" "I've been wandering for a while trying to find my way back." I pointed in the direction we'd come from. He didn't move right away. After a moment, I asked, "Are your friends out there with you?" His smile faded for just a second, his face going blank. Then he smiled again and glanced toward the dark forest behind him. "Didn't know there were others here. I've been hiking alone today. Guess I would have asked them for directions if I'd seen anyone," he said. That was strange. I was almost certain he was lying. He came from the same exact direction as the voices we'd heard, but I didn't say anything except, "Oh, okay." He smiled one last time, gave a short nod, and turned to walk down the path. The fact that he denied hearing those voices made my stomach twist. Why lie? Why pretend not to notice anyone else out there? For 2 inexperienced campers like us, that night was already nerve-wracking enough. Ethan's voice shook when he said, "We should leave." Now, after thinking about it for a few seconds, I agreed. That uneasy feeling had turned into full-blown panic as we packed up our things in a rush. Just as we put out the fire and threw on our packs, I heard a single crunch of leaves right behind me. We both turned around. The woods were pitch black and silent. With shaking hands, I reached for my flashlight and turned it on. The beam cut through the dark. Standing no more than 15 feet in front of me was the same man, the cowboy hat, the long brown hair. He was just standing there, watching us, expressionless. When the light hit his face, that same wide grin spread across it again. In a panic, I switched the light off and we both took off running down the trail. Then I heard it. More footsteps. Not just his, but several, crashing through the brush on both sides of us. For minutes, it sounded like they were chasing us through the trees. Then, silence again. It was just us running through the dark. Eventually, we made it back to the car, unharmed but completely shaken. We jumped in and drove off as fast as we could. To this day, I still don't know what we ran into out there. It's been a while since that trip, and Ethan and I haven't gone camping since.